So we took a fun sidestep to a non-Metroid gaming topic this past week, and it was a lot of fun to discuss The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, but now it's time to get back to the real meat and potatoes of all things gaming right now, which of course is Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. So as my every waking thoughts continues to be just filled with the excitement and joy I have over the reveal of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and as my coverage of the game continues, I have so many topics that I have planned to discuss surrounding this game just based off of the 2-minute teaser and the small snippet of gameplay we've seen so far. I'm rewatching that trailer every day. I'm reanalyzing my own thoughts and opinions. I've been on a podcast and talked about it. I've heard other people talk about their theories. I'm always updating my own thoughts as well as just keeping myself excited. And through that, I'm even taking notes, man. Every single day I come up with a new topic or an idea or a theory or something that makes sense to discuss with you guys via this outlet that is my YouTube channel. And so today's topic is one of the most important, I think, to discuss in a world after the reveal of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And I'm kind of surprised in a way that it took me so long to get to it. But at the same time, there's so many things to discuss. I mean, I've just enjoyed already making all of the videos and conversations I've had so far. So the main one we're going to talk about today, and you of course can tell from the title, it's a big deal. And it is the title of the game. We now have confirmed that Metroid Prime 4 does have a subtitle to it. Just like Metroid Prime 2 is called Echoes, Metroid Prime 3 is called Corruption, Metroid Prime 4 is called Beyond. Beyond! Beyond! Now, this is a huge deal because Nintendo and the Metroid franchise doesn't mess around with their subtitles. They always mean something, especially in the Prime games that have a subtitle with Echoes and Corruption. Even if you look at Metroid Prime Hunters on the DS, for example, there were other bounty hunters and hunters in that game. So it made sense. They expanded the wider world of what it meant for there to be bounty hunters in the kind of universe that is the Metroid universe and franchise. And so Beyond, a lot of interesting implications surrounding that. Now, I'm going to mostly focus on the largest theory that's going around out there, and it is one that I agree with. There's another element and kind of theory that I think Beyond might be implying as well that I'll discuss kind of probably more near the end of this video. But I want to focus on, like I said, the larger conversation going on out there, and it has to do with whether or not Beyond is hinting at the idea of time travel in Metroid Prime 4. Fun fact, this past week I also was a part of a really great Metroid panel podcast over on Andres Restart's channel. Andres is a really great YouTube buddy of mine, as well as Super Metal Dave and Joey. The four of us have kind of been really good buddies in the world of talking about Nintendo stuff and gaming, and especially Metroid. We've all done tons of Metroid projects and podcasts and conversations together, and we had almost a 2-hour podcast, just the four of us, diving deep into Metroid Prime 4 Beyond after the reveal. So much fun. It is linked below. Please go and watch the full thing on Andres' channel. It was so much fun to do. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about when dissecting or theorizing around what Beyond could mean, and of course this larger concept of time travel maybe being in this game, we spend a lot of time talking about on that podcast as well. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper in this conversation in this video, but if you want to hear a larger discussion with the four of us, again, please go and check out that fantastic podcast we did. Okay, so let's get into it, man. Beyond. What does it mean? Does it mean time travel? I tend to think so. And it's a really exciting prospect, especially if you've been following all of the different ideas that they've explored in the Metroid universe and even in the Prime trilogy, the Prime series. Does beyond mean beyond time? Because that's the thing. The word beyond in and of itself feels like it's like an incomplete sentence. Beyond time. Beyond space. Beyond the traffic ahead of you, you know? Beyond whatever. It could be beyond anything, you know? Beyond McDonald's. Just fill in the blank. And so when we consider beyond meaning time travel, I think it could mean beyond time and space, you know, beyond the journeys that have preceded Samus. She's going to do something she's never done. We're going to experience something we've never experienced in the Metroid franchise by maybe moving around within time, going back in time, going into the future. Like I said, beyond time and space. Now, interestingly enough, not only does that make sense for a variety of reasons, including a lot of the hints the teaser has given us, I've even talked about how this game looks like it could be in several places in the timeline. that could also be, when you look at Psylocke, when you look at the Machtroids, when you look at the battle that we see, when you look at the shot of her maybe walking away from some kind of a portal in the forest at the very end of the trailer, we're seeing glimpses that maybe we're not just set in one timeline in Metroid Prime 4, but maybe we're visiting a few timelines, right? But beyond that, interestingly enough, back in 2015, Kensuke Tanabe, the producer of the Metroid Prime series, he actually hinted at the idea and spoke about his desire to play with the idea of time in the follow-up to Metroid Prime 3, in a theoretical Metroid Prime 4, again, going back to 2015. Speaking to Eurogamer, here are some of the things he said that hinted in that direction. Eurogamer wrote, speaking with Tanabe, it was clear he had plenty of ideas for the game, talking about a fourth Metroid Prime, including a focus on a single planet that has a time-shifting mechanic, similar to Metroid Prime 2 Echo's single planet with dark light variants. I will be talking about my theory on that, because I already was thinking that even before I rechecked what these quotes actually said. So that's Eurogamer's words. Here's a snippet of what Tanabe said. Instead of broadening it to more planets, I would have one and would focus on the timeline and being able to change that. That's one interesting idea I have in mind, but I understand many people thought that Echoes was too difficult. So right there, he's basically saying, and Eurogamer is recontextualizing, because of course, quotes like these are always going to be translated, so there might be some missing elements that spells it out more clearly. But it basically sounds like he wants to, and I am really excited about this part. This is a whole different topic almost, and I've theorized this for a while as well. He's moving away from multiple planets, which Metroid Prime 3 introduced. He wants to go back to being on one single planet, which Primes 1 and 2 and pretty much every Metroid game does. Well, then you have Metroid Fusion or Metroid Other M, which are focused on one single space station, but they're still one location. You're not flying your gunship to multiple locations. Prime 3, really, and Hunters are the only games that actually did that. Well, Federation Force 2, but you guys know what I mean. All of the main games, they focus on one planet, one location. Metroid Prime 3 brought in the idea of multiple planets. From Prime 4, back in 2015, Tanabe was already talking about coming back to one singular planet, which I love. I think that is better. I didn't love the way they executed the multiple planets thing in Prime 3. I didn't hate it. That game is amazing. But in a world where I could choose multiple planets or one planet, I want one planet. And so back then he was talking about that. And he talks about one planet with a time-shifting mechanic, which to me continues to echo, no pun intended, I promise, what they did with Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, where Metroid Prime 2 you were on just the planet Aether, but Planet Aether had these really fantastic portals that took you between a light and a dark world of that singular planet. Now let's go back and revisit that final shot from the Metroid Prime 4 Beyond trailer, the teaser really, where at the end we see Samus walking on that beautiful, gigantic, epic forest landscape. And you may or may not have noticed this, but if you zoom in on where she's walking, she's very small and in the distance, there is what looks like some kind of portal or emanating light source that she's walking away from. Very, very interesting detail to this scene. Now, what I think is going on, and again, even before going back to check exactly what Tanabe had said in this interview, what I was thinking when I noticed this myself, and I didn't include this in the breakdown because this was like the first day, the first 24 hours this thing was out, and there was so much to continue to take away from this. But what I liken this to, in a world where we're looking at maybe a time-shifting mechanic, that reminds me of, like I said, the portals, the dark and light portals that existed in Metroid Prime 2 Echoes on Planet Aether, where you would activate these portals and they would move you between the light world and the dark world of Planet Aether. And what if what we're seeing from this part of the Metroid Prime 4 trailer, that little emanating light source, whatever that is, could instead of a light and dark world portal, maybe be a time portal, allowing Samus to maybe jump back and forth between, I don't know, 2 points in time? Now, as we were discussing this on that Metroid Prime 4 podcast I referenced earlier on Andres Restart's channel, one of the things I brought up is how not only would that mirror the idea of the portals in Metroid Prime 2 that move you between light and dark world, but if we're moving between, let's just say for the sake of argument, 2 designated points in time, it would actually be very similar to The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, where Link is moving back and forth between 7 years in the past and 7 years in the future. And you see the difference of what happened to Hyrule in a world where Ganondorf took over. And in the past, you're young, small Link. In the future, you're older, tough Link, and you have access to different weapons and items and different temples. Zelda, of course, at different ages, and Marin is different ages, and the state of Hyrule Castle is completely different. And you literally can, by playing the Song of Time, you go back and forth between those 2 points in time in that game. And so when I think about the title Beyond, I think about Tanabe's quotes from 2015, I think about the hints we see from the end of the trailer and what they've done previously with Metroid Prime 2, I think we might be seeing a situation where Samus is using some kind of a portal or ability that moves her back and forth between points in time, just like the portals in Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Something else I also noticed while editing this video that I forgot to bring up is the logo. We have to talk about the logo, you guys. Much has been made about the shape and the design of the logo and how in many ways it maybe looks like a black hole behind the actual words Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And the more I look at it, the more I obviously agree. I think that there is something to the idea of a black hole. And when you really zoom in, here's a really interesting element to the logo. You really zoom in and you notice that kind of like circular pattern that is, around behind the logo Metroid Prime 4. We see what looks to be potentially space, and again, maybe a black hole at the center. That kind of round shape, almost as if it's being pulled into that center, where it looks like, again, it might be a black hole. I might be looking too much into this, but I think that the very center where it looks like it's pulling that circular object around into it also kind of in a way matches the portal it looks like Samus is walking away from in that final forest shot at the end of the trailer. So obviously, we could be reading too much into it. I might be reading too much into it. This could actually still be a black hole image that's meant to kind of insinuate the idea of time travel. And maybe I'm connecting dots that aren't meant to be connected when I see the portal in the forest and what seems to be the portal at the center of the logo. But I don't know, man. It just seems like too much is lining up for this not to mean something. So I think the logo really is hinting at something in this direction. Now, full disclosure, probably my next Metroid Prime 4 video is going to talk about Metroid Prime. Not the series, not my favorite game of all time, released in 2002 on the GameCube. I'm talking about the enemy, the entity, the Metroid creature, the final boss to the original Metroid Prime game, which itself is called Metroid Prime. And if you know the story of the Prime trilogy, you know that Metroid Prime and its surviving essence and the existence of Dark Samus in Primes 2 and 3 are all correlated to Metroid Prime. Basically, Metroid Prime as an entity and a threat exists in Metroid Prime form in the first game, and then in the form of Dark Samus in Primes 2 and 3 throughout that entire trilogy. And ultimately, Samus's goal and her achievement by the end of that trilogy is defeating Dark Samus, defeating the essence of Metroid Prime, and removing that threat and phase-on from the entire galaxy. However, I want to talk about how Metroid Prime still could play a role in this game, especially because it's still called Metroid Prime 4. There are discussions and theories and great points folks have made, including friends of mine, Joey on that podcast made this, and they're all valid points. That Metroid Prime as an entity and a threat very likely could be done. Tanabe, even in the same interview, says that he kind of wrapped up the Dark Samus and the phase-on threat with Prime 3. However, I still think through the time-shifting mechanic, look, I'm going to be honest, and whatever Sylux is doing, maybe Sylux is moving through time. I mean, I don't want to go too deep into it because this needs its own video, but I think that there is a way that adding the idea of moving through time might be able to revisit Metroid Prime as a threat in a few ways. And so I won't go into that any deeper. I needed to first have this conversation about the title of Beyond and about the concept of time travel before I then dedicate an entire other video discussion and theory surrounding Metroid Prime and if that can play any kind of a role in Beyond. So Beyond talking about the idea of time travel seems most likely. It seems very exciting to me. We've already had hints from Tanabe almost 10 years ago about this. And if you follow that trajectory and look at what we've seen in the 2-minute trailer we have, there's enough to go on to say, yeah, there's a great chance we're looking at time travel. Whether it's the portal, whether it's Sylux, whether it's the existence of mock droids and or Metroids or whatever is going on there, the space pirates themselves. Who knows what's going on? Beyond time and space to me seems most likely, and boy does it make me very excited. But I did mention I had another concept that Beyond could actually be discussing or referencing for this game, and I think it could mean a threat beyond what is in the known observable galaxy within what Samus has experienced in the entire series so far. Now, I'm going to be real with you guys. I have no idea what that could mean. This is a very abstract theory that I have, or idea or concept that I have, but Beyond just could mean, we've played so many games, like 14, 15 Metroid games, in this franchise, spanning many years, spanning many different threats, whether it's Mother Brain, whether it's Ridley, whether it's Metroid Prime, whether it's the Space Pirates, whether it's the Emmy robots from Metroid Dread. She's had the fusion suit, she's had the PED suit, Adam Malkovich, and all the stuff that everyone loves to complain about that I actually kind of like. Whatever it is, Samus has experienced a lot. Fantoon, being the final enemy in Metroid Other M, a very large threat. There's a lot that she's dealt with. The Metroids themselves. I mean, good lord, how could I even forget just the Metroids, the actual namesake of this series? But what if Metroid Prime 4 is meant to kick off a brand new series, maybe a new trilogy of Metroid Prime games, maybe just a different, larger new story, because I've gone back and forth in my head on if I think Metroid Prime 4 is just one new game to button up this entire story, or if they want to start a new series of games, which I would love. And if that's the case, why can't this game, especially if they are planning to move on from the Space Pirates, and well, not the Space Pirates are in this game. They're planning to move on from Dark Samus. They're planning to move on from Metroid Prime. They're planning to move on from Phazon. And if they're doing that, Samus, in the observable galaxy that the Galactic Federation works within, has dealt with all of those different threats I've mentioned. What if there's something from beyond what is known in the universe and in the, like I keep saying, the observable galaxy that all of the Metroid series takes place within and that Samus has experienced? What if that is something that we're going to deal with? Beyond space and time? Absolutely. Beyond the known galaxy that we're familiar with and Samus is familiar with? What if it means that? And again, I sure as hell am not smart enough to come up with examples, because this would come down to Tanabe and the writers and the developers at Retro and Nintendo to think of something that we could never think of, that is a different kind of Metroid, a threat beyond the Metroids, a threat beyond Phazon or the Space Pirates. Just introduce beyond Mother Brain, beyond Ridley, something we could never think of or fathom. What if that is what's going to be introduced in this game? And it's tricky, because we already know Psylocke is going to play a role in this game, so I think the most immediate threat and immediate antagonist will be Psylocke. But that doesn't mean that there won't be something else larger at play. That's already my theory. You guys have heard me say that. I think Psylocke is going to play a similar role to what Dark Samus played. And so we'll run into and fight Psylocke probably a few times, but there's probably a larger looming threat that's happening. Whether or not Psylocke will know about it would remain to be seen. But, I still lean towards Beyond referencing time travel, but I also wonder, and I want us to remember that I said this right here and now, in case it comes true. This is just a theory, okay? I don't know anything, obviously. What if it's referencing a threat beyond what we know and beyond what we've seen before? Thematically, the word beyond could be referencing something like that. And as much as I want that time travel thing, I'm really excited about what a new threat beyond what we've seen could also mean. So, of course, I'll be really curious and excited to hear what you guys think. What do you think beyond means? Do you think it has anything to do with time travel? Does the evidence and the breadcrumbs that I laid out and discussed in this video connect and make sense to you for it to be time travel? What do you think about the idea of it referencing a new threat beyond what we've seen? Or do you have a completely different theory or idea on what the subtitle of Beyond could actually mean? It is a very exciting time. You guys, I can't even stress to you with my human English words just how excited I am right now. I am just so reinvigorated with all this. To be able to theorize and to speculate and to pour through footage and read old interviews and start to connect dots and come up with concepts. Oh my god, and this incredible, beautiful gameplay we have. I don't know, man. I'm geeking out. I'm gushing. And I should probably just wrap it up at this point, because at this point I'm just going to gush. But It's exciting, man. We're living in the golden era, man. Metroid Prime 4, it's real. This footage is so great. The title Beyond, what does it mean? Are we traveling through time? Are we going to be on a new planet? Are we going to be revisiting old planets? I mean, I didn't even talk about how... Okay, I'm going to go into this. Here we go. You know what? Screw it. I'm just going to add this into the end of the video. When we talk about the time travel thing, I also mentioned this in that podcast on Andres Restart's channel. I think that there is a chance, and this could be handled really great or really poorly, but I trust in them to do it great. They could be doing a situation where maybe Samus is going to be revisiting some past events or past planets. What if we go back to Aether? What if we go back to Talon 4? What if we go back to I don't know, Zebes? Or, I don't know, SR388? I mean, there's so many different things depending on where the starting point of Metroid Prime 4 is. Because that could be anywhere. 20x9... I mean, we've discussed it at length. So, what's the starting point of Metroid Prime 4? Could she go into the future after Dread? Do we start after Dread? Does she go back into the past? You know, I mean, she could go to ZDR for all we know. It's insane. She could go to the bottle ship. Good lord. So, are we going to revisit past events, past locations? Would Samus run into a past version of herself? So, I likened it. I made 2 movie references in that podcast that they could try to emulate. And one is Back to the Future, the other is Avengers Endgame. Now, personally, I would prefer the Back to the Future approach, where in Back to the Future 2, Marty McFly goes back, and he sees himself performing at the Under the Sea dance from a distance, from above. He's sneaking around. He does everything he can to not get in the way of what happened and change the course of the events, watching himself from the future back in the past at the Under the Sea dance. Maybe Samus does something like that, and she sees herself fighting Dark Samus or fighting Mother Brain in the past, but she doesn't get involved and has to achieve something in secret around those events. But then there's the Avengers Endgame approach, and I love Avengers Endgame as a movie, but I don't want them to do that approach. I think that would be jumping the shark for the series. But what if she goes back and she's literally kind of revisiting the greatest hits from the prior games, right? And she's revisiting Metroid Prime, and she's revisiting Metroid Dread, and she's revisiting Kraid and Super Metroid, Ridley, you know, whatever the case, Aurora 313 unit. What if she's doing all those and she gets actively involved to try to move things around in the timeline? Those are 2 ways I could see them doing it outside of just being on a planet and traveling in 2 points in time, which is my preferred choice. But what if they wanted to do something larger scale? And again, you've got the Back to the Future approach, you've got the Avengers Endgame approach. Both are interesting. Back to the Future, way better to me, way more cerebral and just fascinating as a concept to me. So I wanted to revisit this analogy I made in that podcast, because I think in this conversation about the title Beyond and the time travel, it's a relevant concept to think about them possibly trying. Anyways, I'm officially done. Talk about my theories, talk about your own theories, what makes the most sense to you. And like I said, I got plenty more Metroid Prime 4 videos coming up in the very near future, so please keep a lookout for that. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time on another Metroid video.